witnesses, we'll have them staged and ready to go, so this won't happen again.
Good morning. Your name?
Elizabeth Stevens.
Elizabeth Stevens.
Correct.
Good morning. Please raise your hand and be sworn.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat right over here. Pull up your chair and get comfortable and start questions. Just enough so that we can get your, yes, thank you.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Mr. Boggs, are you going to try and get back in, or?
I'm trying, Judge.
One second. There it is. All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. And just for the record, this is ADA Daniel Elizondo doing the direct examination. Good morning, Ms. Stevens.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Very good. Could you please, for the record, state your complete name?
Elizabeth Mary Stevens.
And Stevens, could you spell that for the court reporter, please?
Stephen's.
Thank you. How are you currently employed, Ms. Stevens?
I'm retired, recently retired from Motorola Solutions.
Okay. And obviously, you said you recently retired from Motorola Solutions, so before that you were at Motorola?
Yes.
And what was your position at Motorola?
Principal staff engineer, software.
Okay. And how long had you been working at Motorola in that position?
I've been at Motorola for 38 years, and in that position generally for almost 30 of those years.
30. Okay. And what were your duties as the principal staff engineer?
I worked with the development team of Astro subscriber products, and basically working on specifically the products that have already been released to a customer. And so we would handle any issues with the product that the call center could not resolve. So if there was either an issue or something that the radio was doing that the customer complained about, or that wasn't configured correctly, or that they needed more information about, we would investigate. So we would work with the customer directly to try to understand their complaint, reproduce their complaint if it wasn't just an understanding issue. And we would find out whether it was a problem with the system, with the configuration of the radio, or in some cases we would actually have to resolve the issue with a software change in the product itself, or
I want to stop you right there very
enhancement.
briefly.
Sure.
You keep mentioning product and customers. What kind of product are we talking about?
We're talking about radios that either go into a vehicle to communicate with, a dispatch center, things like that, or between radio to radio with other people on the team, group calls, individual calls, as well as data, whatever data services they used on that system.
Okay. And with regards to customers, was the United States Customs and Border Protection a customer of Motorola at that time that you serviced?
Yes, they were.
And this was back in 2018? as well?
Yes, they were.
Jury, a little bit about your educational background, any degrees or trainings or experience that you have with working with these types of products, and so on and so forth.
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in the Department of Computer and Information Sciences, and that's a 4-year degree. And after graduating, I did start working at Motorola after one other job, but it was pretty soon after graduated that I started working at Motorola. Motorola provided a lot of training, mostly on-the-job training specific to the products we developed. Also, things like C++, object-oriented programming, all of the skills sets that evolved as I continued to work there.
And C++, is that a code writing?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what
it's
that is?
It's a programming language that is used extensively in our products.
Okay. And at Motorola, did you ever conduct data extractions of your customers' products, being the mobile radios?
Yes, because, like I said, we worked on, customer complaints. So we had to collect data out of radios while they're operating or post complaint as well. So you'd have to, we knew how the data was stored in radios. So we had, because we did a lot of that programming ourselves.
Good morning.
So,
I hope you can hear
the
me
people that
now. I
developed
was having problems
the
with my
memory
microphone.
management
Imagine that.
of
Thank you for
the
being here.
computer devices inside the radio would also develop tools that would access that data.
Okay. Can I ask you to just pull the mic a little bit closer to you? A little bit
How's
more.
that?
Please.
Okay.
Just a little bit more. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So with regards to, doing these investigations into customer complaints and extracting the data, how many times would you say you've done an extraction of a Motorola mobile radio?
It's a countless number. I would do it on a daily basis.
On a daily basis?
Well, I mean, for any particular customer complaint, I was probably either collecting data while the radio is running or extracting data that is already residing in the radio.
Okay. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the Motorola mobile radios. What are these radios used for?
They're used for communication, voice and data communication between people out in the field in their vehicles or on their person, with a dispatch center usually, or between each other, and so it's a communication device for voice and data applications.
Okay. And do these radios and these devices, do they store GPS data?
They do.
Okay.
They all contain a GPS device.
All right. And before I get into that data, I want to briefly cover GPS. Can you kind of explain a little bit in layman's terms how GPS works?
Sure. GPS, or Global Positioning System, has two major parts to get a coordinate. So one of the parts is the satellites, of course, and so there's satellites that have known orbits around the Earth. There's a number of them in the system, and at any one time, covering any part of the world, there's at least 4. That's the plan. That's the configuration of these satellites. There's at least 4 visible satellites at every location on the Earth. So the job of those satellites is to transmit information, and they're very precisely coordinated. They use atomic clocks, all of them, to synchronize their transmissions. So they're the transmitting units in the system. All of the GPS devices or chips in your devices, like a cell phone or all of Motorola's radios, they are receiving. They're not transmitting anything for the GPS purposes. They're all listening to those satellites. They know where, they know how to listen to every one of those satellites. It's all, pre-configured or known to the devices. They all so they all have along with the transmitted information about where the satellite is in its orbit and its timing information, the devices are able to, basically use mathematics. If they can see 4 satellites, they can determine the distance to each one of those satellites. And through math, they can figure out the unknowns, which would be your longitude, latitude, altitude, and as well as the exact time from that transmission. So that transmission arrives at the radio or at the GPS chip in the radio, and from there it's up to the chip itself to determine those coordinates.
So in essence, then, like you said, there's about 4 satellites at any given time, at least 4, transmitting data that the GPS chip inside of a device would collect, and based off of that transmission data and the information it gathers and the mathematics it uses, it can determine where it is on Earth.
On the Earth, yes.
Okay. And how reliable is GPS?
It's in open sky. It's very reliable. It does depend on your receiver. You have to have a good receiver, and you need to have a clear signal to the satellites.
Okay. So, with regards to the Motorola GPS, or with regards to the Motorola mobile radios, how is it that they gather and store this GPS data?
It depends on the features that are enabled in the radio. The customer that we're talking about didn't use any location features. So the only one that was available to the radio itself is a power down location. So Motorola, for its own device, uses that information so that when it powers back up again, it can get a lock faster. Okay. So Motorola devices store that shutdown coordinates and time at the time that the radio is shut down, probably when the vehicle is stopped and turned off. Okay. So that value is stored.
Okay, and you said
if it's accurate.
Okay. And with regards to you had mentioned this particular customer. Are you referring to the United States Customs and Border Protection?
Yes.
So the only function and feature that they had on their device was that the GPS that the mobile radio would store GPS data when the device turned off.
Yes.
Okay. And are there any, you had mentioned at the very end that it would store this data if it was accurate. What do you mean by that?
Well, the device, the GPS device itself has criteria. It has to have enough satellites to do its job, and it does know something about the signal quality as well. So if it deems the signal usable to some, parameters, it will report it to the Motorola device. The Motorola device then applies its own criteria on top of that to determine whether the signal had the quality that is required to make it a useful waypoint to store. it might be have been a useful, coordinate to use for, a mapping system that's getting updates all the time and things like that. But to store it on the shutdown, we would want a useful coordinate for the purpose of speeding up the lock on power up.
Okay. So in essence then, before it stores this data, you would say it goes through a filtration system to make sure that it is a useful, accurate, and reliable source.
Yes, based on quality of the signal.
And it does that 2 times.
Yes, I mean the GPS device itself is doing that basically to get a good fix and report it, and then the Motorola software that's written to act on that GPS data also looks at some quality criteria.
Okay. So I want to, actually now, I think I got this one. Actually, before that, permission to approach the witness, Your Honor.
Approach the witness. Sorry.
All right. Now showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 269. I'm sorry, 296, 297, 298, and 299. Are you familiar with these items?
Yes,
What is it?
it is the customer APX 7500 radio.
And how are you familiar with this APX 7500 radio?
It was brought to the Motorola facility where I was working, and I extracted data from it.
Are you offering, Mr.
I believe they've already been admitted. I just wanted to let the defense know what I was
All right.
referring to.
Thank you. Didn't check to see.
Is this the radio that you conducted an examination and extracted data from?
Yes, it is.
Permission to approach the witness again. Now showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2. Are you familiar with this item?
Yes,
And what is it?
it is the APX 7500 radio that I extracted data from.
Okay. The state is now offering to admit State's Exhibit number 2 into evidence.
No objection. Admitted without objection.
All right. So this radio is the radio that you conducted an examination of
Correct.
and extracted data from.
Yes.
And let me ask you, how did you come into possession of this radio?
It was brought to the facility. I met with the officers that brought it
Okay.
in a conference room, and I brought my equipment because that's just the transceiver part of the radio. It doesn't have the control head or the power supply attached to it yet, so I had to bring that material with me to the conference room. And basically, most of the time spent was setting it up, just getting it all connected to the control head and the power supply. I had to go back for cables once that were the wrong type for that, because that model needed a specific type of connector. So by the time I got that all done, the actual extraction, because I knew where the data was that I wanted to extract. I used a tool on my laptop, proprietary Motorola tool that can read data out of that section of the memory, and I used it to extract that information that I knew contained, if any, the waypoints.
Okay. And with this tool that you use, this proprietary tool that I assume Motorola developed, is that correct?
That's correct.
When you're using this tool on that day that you did the examination, was the tool in working order?
Yes.
And was your laptop in working order?
Yes.
And so, obviously, you said you had to go get some power cords and stuff like that, but ultimately, you did extract the data and analyze it.
Correct.
And did you generate a report after you conducted that?
Yes.
Okay. Permission to approach, Your Honor.
Granted.
I'm not showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 506. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Could you please tell me what it is?
It's the report that I emailed to the agents about the data that I extracted from the radio.
Okay. Now, this report, was it generated at or near the time when you conducted the analysis and extraction of the data?
Yes.
And was this report generated in the regular course of business of Motorola in extracting data and analyzing customer products?
Yes.
Okay. And this is an accurate, true and correct copy of your report?
Yes.
Okay. I'm now tendering to defense State's Exhibit 506 for inspection and objections.
Any objections? Are you offering?
No objections. Yes, Your Honor.
506?
State's Exhibit 506 is being offered into evidence.
Admitted without objection.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Right.
Ms. Stevens, could you please explain to the jury what it is that we're looking at here?
This is the data that has a date timestamp and a coordinate associated with that timestamp.
Okay. And this data was extracted from that radio that's on the state's table right there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we're looking here, you said that it was date stamped and time stamped, correct? It had the date and time stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, is that what would be right here?
Yes.
Now, what are all these numbers on this side of your report?
Those are the GPS coordinates, latitude and longitude of the position of the radio at that time.
Okay. And I assume that these numbers correlate with the time and date on the left-hand side.
Correct.
And these would have been stored and saved on that radio anytime it powered down?
Correct.
Okay.
Each line is a separate waypoint.
From a power down cycle, and was then saved onto the device. How many, if we can count here, how many waypoints were saved on April 9th of 2018?
9.
Okay. And at any point in time, have you been able to, in your analysis of this data, did you ever map out those coordinates?
Yes.
Permission to approach, Your Honor. I'm now showing you what's been marked as states 507, 508, 509, and 510. Are you familiar with these items?
Yes.
What are they?
They are images, maps, satellite image maps of with pinpoints containing the coordinates on the report.
From your report. Now, obviously, we're looking right here at actual locations, correct, based off of the longitude and latitude?
Correct.
But we can't see anything, correct,
Yes.
as far as where it actually is?
Right. You need to enter it into a, something like Google Earth or Google Maps.
Okay. Would it be helpful to the jury to see these items to understand exactly where these pinpoints on your report are?
I think so.
Okay. Now, tendering to the defense, states 510, 59, 58, and 57.
You saying 510, 509, 508?
508, 507. Yes, Your Honor.
And are you offering?
Yes, Your Honor. I will be offering them to evidence.
Any objection?
Your Honor, the objection is that there hasn't been any testimony to show that Ms. Giffens mapped this waypoint. And so we don't know how this worked from you.
Maybe we can.
I'm sorry. So what is your objection?
Well, that this is not, she hasn't testified that she prepared this exhibit. There's no testimony showing that they're reliable.
Why don't we do this? Why don't you finish up the question with regard to how that was done and where they landed on each one of those photographs, and then we'll take it one by one like that. All right?
All right. Now, Ms. Stevens, you've seen these photos already, so I don't need to show them to you again. Did you yourself prepare these?
I did not.
But you reviewed them.
I did.
And you did your own separate analysis of mapping the coordinates from your report, correct?
Correct.
And when reviewing them, were you able to look at them side by side and analyze the waypoints and the pinpoints that were marked on these images?
Yes, I took the the coordinates off of the report itself, entered into Google Maps, and compared the exact images with my images.
And you compared your images to these images?
Correct.
And were they identical?
Yes.
Now, one more thing, if you could. Is there anything here that indicates where these photos were generated from?
What are you showing the witnesses?
Oh, I'm showing the witness 507, 508, 509, and 510. And I'll fan them out so you can see. And particularly right here.
Okay, yes, it indicates that it was created by Google Earth program.
All right.
Good.
Again, Your Honor, I'm offering to evidence 507 through 510.
Approach this?
If you're just joining us, thank you for being here. I've been uploading these videos with commentary, and let me tell you, that's like 12-hour a day of work. So I decided at the very last minute this morning to go live. And I will, right now I don't even have my microphone connected, but at lunchtime I will do that. And for the afternoon session, I personally will have much better audio.
In this image, you said that there were pins, correct?
Correct.
And those pins indicate what?
The location that the coordinates relate to.
That relate to what? Your report? Or?
In the report, those GPS coordinates are latitude and longitude. They will pinpoint a location, an actual location, and Google Earth or Google Maps will draw for you a pin and place it on the map at those coordinates.
So explain how you verified these pinpoints that are on states 507, 508, 509, and 510. What is it that you did in order to double check, cross-reference, and verify those images?
I opened up Google Maps.
Okay.
In the search bar, I entered, actually I cut and pasted from the report that exact number and pasted it into the search bar in Google Maps.
Okay.
Hit enter,
Okay.
and it displayed the pin for that location on the map, and I compared it to your Google Earth images, and it was identical.
Okay. Now, when you say you copy and pasted, how many did you copy and paste?
All 9 from the list from April 9th.
Of 2018?
Yes.
Okay. And so you copied each and every single
Each one.
longitude and latitude, and you mapped it out and cross-referenced it with these images,
Correct.
and were they identical?
They were identical.
And in states 507, 508, 509, and 510, within these images are all 9 of the waypoints from April 9th of 2018 mapped out and pinned down in those images.
Correct.
And how are they mapped down, or how are they pinned down in those images? What is there?
There's a yellow pin marker,
Okay.
and the coordinate is printed on the image as well.
Okay. And the coordinate is also printed on the pin as well. And those coordinates that are on those pins, when you typed in those same coordinates, copy pasted it from the report, and put it into Google Maps, the pinpoints were exactly in the same position.
Correct.
Okay. And just again, on each of these 9 pins that are shown in these images.
You're not going to object to the leading questions about this. It's one leading question after another.
Okay. Are you, sustained, but are you reoffering?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objections to the offer?
Same objections, Your Honor, that there is a lack of foundation to show precisely how those images are generated, other than Ms. Tiffen's testimony that she plugged in the coordinates to Google Earth, and that they coincided with her determination of the waypoint.
All right.
I don't think that's sufficient to show the reliability of those waypoints.
Okay. Your objection is overruled. The state's exhibits are admitted. 507, 08, 09, and 510. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right. Now, I want to cross-reference these photos with your report. So, let's start at the beginning. Because it seems to me, or you can say, is it correct that these timestamps, along with their coordinates, are in reverse order, being the latest one at the top and the earlier ones at the bottom?
Correct.
Okay. So let's start with the first one on
And
April 9th.
And don't try not to leave your witness.
Oh, yes, Your Honor. On April 9th, could you please, for the jury, read the date, the time, and the coordinate?
2018, April 9th at 7:59:07 Central Daylight Time. The coordinates are, do I need to read out the whole number?
I'm sorry, the coordinate?
You
Yes,
want me to
please.
read the whole number?
Or
27.61 to a lot of digits, and minus 99.47 with a lot of precision digits as well.
Okay. Now, with regards to that coordinate, this coordinate right here and this plotting point of that coordinate from your report, this is where that coordinate, in essence, from this radio, when you extracted that data, showed the location of that radio.
Yes, basically that's the graphical representation of that coordinate.
Okay. And that was at what time again?
At I think it was 7:59.
I'm going to point right here. I know it's a little difficult to see. Oh, is that the yellow thumbtack
Yes.
that you referred to earlier? And again, that's what is that for the jury?
That what the pinpoint? It's a graphical representation of that coordinate on April 9th.
On April 9th. The first one that morning.
Yes.
Okay. And right here, could you read for the jury what that is, what that says right there? I can zoom in.
It's okay. Laredo North Border Patrol Station.
All right.
If you're just joining us, they are going through all these GPS coordinates because they were able to basically track Ronald's path that morning.
Oh,
based on these
This
GPS
is the
coordinates.
coordinate that we had just covered right now in that photo, right? The States Exhibit 510.
Correct.
Okay. Now, these two coordinates right here, could you please state the date and time as well as the coordinate?
April 9th, 2018 at 9:49 a.m. or Central Daylight Time, and April 9th at 16:59 Central Daylight Time.
I'm sorry. These two right here.
Okay. Oh, sorry, 9:49 and 10:10.
Okay. And then obviously the coordinates. If you could just read the first four numbers of each of those coordinates, please.
Okay, the earlier one is 27.57 and minus 99.52.
And for the one at 1010?
27.57 and minus 99.52.
All right. Now again, going over the same exercise. This pin right here, what is that?
That is the location at the timestamp.
Okay. And this one right here?
That's the second location of that time with the 10:10 timestamp.
So this right here is from 1010, and then this one was the 949, the one prior to it.
Yes.
Okay. And these are where a power down cycle occurred.
Yes.
And would that be the data that was stored
That would be a waypoint stored.
on this radio right
Yes.
here?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, moving back to your report. And for the record, the image that was just up was States Exhibit 509, and we're now moving back to a report, States Exhibit 506. After the 1010, could you please read the next three timestamps, date, as well as the first four of each of these coordinates?
On April 9th at 13:10, the coordinate is 27.57 minus 99.52. On April 9th at 16:59, the coordinate is 27.57 and minus 99.52. And on April 9th at 17:08, the coordinate is 27.57 and minus 99.52.
Ready. Now, publishing States Exhibit 508. Could you please tell the jury what this is?
It's a graphical representation of those three coordinates.
Okay. And just going in. Looks like these coordinates were very close to each other, but reading the first one, at what time was this coordinate saved to the device?
At 16:59.
The top one, please.
Oh, sorry. 13:01. Yeah, that's
Alrighty.
earlier.
And how about the bottom one now?
At 16:59.
And for purposes of the record, 16:59 would be what time? If we put it into a 12-hour instead of a 24?
4:59.
And 13:01, again, if we put it in a 12-hour instead of a 24?
1:01 p.m.
Alrighty. And lastly, this pin right here.
Yes, that one is the representation of the third coordinate at 5:08 p.m.
At 5:08. Okay. So again, in this photo, based off your report, which is based off of your report, these would be the coordinates that were saved to this device?
Correct.
And that would have occurred during a power down cycle?
Correct.
Okay. Now going back to State's Exhibit 508. I would like to cover the top three. If you could read the date and time of the top three waypoints, as well as the first four numbers of their coordinates.
On April 9th at 1812, the coordinate was 27.53 and minus 99.47. On April 9th at 1814, the coordinate was 27.53 and minus 99.47. And on April 9th at 1814.50, the coordinate is 27.53 and minus 99.47.
Alrighty. And for the jury, if we convert that hour 18 into a 12-hour, what time would that be?
6 o'clock p.m. 6:14.
6:14, and then if you could just put them all out there, it'd be
6:14 again. 30 seconds earlier, 6:14 and 6:12.
Alrighty. I'm publishing State's Exhibit 507. Could you tell us what this is, please?
A graphical representation of the coordinates, the last three coordinates.
Alrighty. Now, zooming into this one. This is one of the. Well, what is this yellow pin?
That is the location of the radio in a parking lot.
Alrighty. And these two coordinates again were pretty close together, but let's start with the top one. At what time was the top coordinate saved?
At 6:14:26.
And now moving to the bottom coordinate.
6:14:50.
And then again, I'm going to go to the parking lot. And at what time was this parking lot coordinate saved?
At 6:12:49.
6:12:49?
Yes.
Alrighty. And if I could, very briefly, have you read what both this and this say.
Laredo Police Department and Laredo Police Patrol Division.
Alrighty. And that was State's Exhibit 507. I'm now moving back to State's Exhibit 506, the expert's report. Alrighty. So, as we just covered, the 9 waypoints that were saved were shown there. And let me ask you, when you conducted the analysis and extracted the data from the Motorola mobile radio, was the data good?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
At the point of collection, while the radio is storing the data, it's written to a block in memory as a record called, waypoint structure. And that record would have a checksum applied to it and stored. And that new member of the block would then be incorporated into a new checksum for the whole block. So that each record has a checksum and each block has a checksum. And so that's at the time it's stored. When I extracted the block of Motorola tool knows how to create that checksum, knows what parts of the block are counted in the checksum value, and it knows what parts of the record are used in the calculation of the record checksum. So it goes ahead and creates its own checksums, and they must match to provide confidence that there was no corruption of the data.
Okay. And you're talking about these checksums. Could you very briefly describe to the jury what exactly is a checksum?
It's an algorithm that, it's actually a value that is created by an algorithm that decides what bits in a set of data are used in a count. Basically, it's counting the number of all data is composed of ones and zeros, and so it'll count the data pieces to see how many ones are actually used in the creation of that data value, and it will plot that, or it stores that in a checksum value.
Okay, and so that's pretty much like a checks and balances to make sure that the data is good and not corrupted, as you said?
Yes.
And in this case, was the checksum good?
Yes, it matched.
No. A couple final questions for you. Referring back to State's Exhibit 506, you indicate that the data extracted from an APX 750 or 7500 mobile radio had a serial number. Could you read that serial number to the jury, please?
656 CRZ 2019.
All right. And that was on State's Exhibit 506. On State's Exhibit 502, could you please read the serial number?
656 CRZ 2019.
All right. So it's safe to say that
Which exhibit number is that?
Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2.
I thought you said 502.
I might have. Apologies. Okay. So it's safe to say that the serial number is the same.
Correct.
And one last thing. On State's Exhibit 2, could you please read what is labeled on the side?
K66119 LRN.
All right. And do you know what that number means?
I do not.
Do you know what this...
It's drawn on after production of the radio. It's not a Motorola number.
Okay. And do you know where this radio came from?
Customs and Border Patrol
Okay.
vehicle.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Any questions?
Yes,
All right.
Good morning, Ms. Stevens.
Good morning.
Ms. Stevens, to try to give the jury a better idea of your testimony and of what it entails, 1 degree of, well, first of all, GPS coordinates use degrees of latitude and longitude, correct?
Yes.
And they also use minutes and seconds, correct?
I'm not familiar with that part of GPS. I don't use it that way.
So you just use degrees of latitude and longitude?
Well, I'm actually not a GPS expert, but I do know that the coordinates can be represented by that number that is stored in the radio.
Do you know that 1 degree of latitude equals approximately 364,000 feet or 69 miles?
Sounds correct.
And 1 degree of longitude equals 288,200 feet or 54.6 miles. Does that sound correct?
Sounds correct.
Okay. Now, according to Exhibit 506, it indicates that 9 GPS location coordinates were recorded over an 11-hour period of time. Is that correct?
It sounds right. I mean, I'd have to do the calculation from the report, but if that's what you found in the report, that's correct.
You're not suggesting that the Motorola device only generated 9 GPS location coordinates over that 11-hour period, are you?
No, those are only the ones that were stored. The GPS device itself is running constantly.
Does the unit ever power down?
The vehicle unit is powered down when they either turn off the radio with the button or turn off the ignition to the car.
Do you know how many GPS location coordinates were generated by this Motorola radio during this 11-hour period of time on April 9, 2018?
I don't know how many the GPS chip is generating, but anytime the radio requires a GPS coordinate, it polls the chip for that information. And the only time it would be polling for that information is when it needs it for an application. And in this case, all it needs it for is storing that power down location.
So would it be correct to say that the 9 GPS location coordinates that you met are only a small fraction of all location coordinates that the unit received during that 11-hour period of time?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, simply that the 9 GPS coordinates that you met are not all of the coordinates that the device received during that period of time, correct?
It's correct that what I don't know is if there were any erroneous GPS locations that were not available at the time of shutdown. So if it did not pass the criteria of getting a good fix, the GPS device itself says it didn't get a good fix, so it's not going to report a coordinate. Or if the Motorola software deemed the signal quality not good enough to use that coordinate, it would also not be stored as a waypoint. So I don't know how many of those there were, if there were any. It could be that, or the other thing is if the vehicle loses power, if for some reason, the battery disconnected or whatever, and you shut down a hard shutdown like that, the radio doesn't get a chance to store a coordinate. But on a normal shutdown, it tries to store a coordinate.
Now, Motorola's technology that is used to generate the GPS location data is proprietary technology, correct? It's technology that belongs to Motorola, in other words, isn't it?
The part of GPS handling outside of the chip is Motorola proprietary, correct?
Yeah. And by proprietary technology, the algorithm is the private property of Motorola, correct? The algorithm that generates the GPS coordinates is private property of Motorola, correct?
That's correct.
And because it is the private property of Motorola, the company does not have to reveal to any third party how that technology works. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, Motorola does not reveal that technology. Those are trade secrets. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so as a result, there's no way for any person to independently verify the accuracy of the GPS location coordinates that are generated by this Motorola radio. Isn't that correct?
Well, someone can use the mapping tool to. There are programs that a customer, or applications we could call them, that a customer could enable on the radio to see how accurate the reported values are.
Google Earth uses an algorithm to determine the waypoints of the GPS coordinates, correct?
Google does. Did you say Google does something? Sorry,
Google
sorry.
Earth uses an algorithm to determine the waypoints of the GPS coordinates. Is that correct?
I still didn't quite catch what you were saying at the beginning. I'm sorry. My hearing's not too good.
My hearing's not that good either. You do know that Google Earth uses an algorithm to determine the waypoints of the GPS coordinates?
To plot the pins?
Yes.
Yes.
And do you have knowledge as to how that algorithm works?
No, not specific knowledge.
And that's because those are trade secrets, correct?
Correct. I've used it a lot, but it seems to work well.
Yes. Now, you don't know whether the GPS coordinates that you extracted on April, that were extracted from the time period that you've been talking about on April 9, 2018, you don't know whether those coordinates place Mr. Burgos in the area of the sector that he was assigned to patrol on the morning of April 9, 2018. Isn't that correct?
I'm going to object. Speculation.
I don't know anything about the activities of the patrol agent.
And of course, the GPS coordinates don't tell you or Mr. Elizondo or any of us what Mr. Burgos was doing in that area at that time, correct?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, very briefly. There are some questions asked to you as to whether or not, if a longitude is off by 1 degree, or if the latitude is off by 1 degree, it could be several miles, thousands of feet off, correct?
Well,
On the GPS coordinates.
I'm not sure if that was implied, but if you're 1 degree off, that would be a big deal, yes.
Okay.
But there's a lot of precision provided so that you can get partial degrees.
Okay. And again, this radio came from a customer of Motorola, correct?
Yes.
And who was that customer again?
Customs and Border Patrol.
I'm not publishing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 510, apologies. And this was what again?
Laredo North Border Patrol Station
And the yellow pin there?
is in the parking lot. It is the coordinate retrieved on April 9th at 7:59 at a latitude and longitude of 27.61 and minus 99.47.
Ronald, my objection is that this is repetitive. We've gone through this questioning already.
And this waypoint came from this radio,
Correct.
which belonged and was a customer of T-Mobile. Of Motorola,
Yes.
and they were United States Customs and Border Protection.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you said you worked at Motorola for 38 years, correct?
Correct.
And do you know when this particular model of radio or similar models that relied on the same software components was developed?
It's been a number of years. I can't recall exactly, but it's probably over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
And you testified earlier that you had been conducting analysis of these types of products for, you said 30 years? Or?
About 30 years, yes.
So is it fair to say that you've been testing and analyzing mobile radios like this since their inception?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to permission to publish States 213. Sorry, I didn't get it.
Go ahead.
I'm not publishing what's been marked as States Exhibit 213. Could you please read to the jury what that number above F-150 says?
K66119.
And again, on States Exhibit number 2, what is the marking on the side? What does that say?
K66119.
Is that the same number that is on that Border Patrol vehicle?
Yes, it is.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Just a few questions, Your Honor. Ms. Stephens, you mentioned that sometimes there are issues with configuration of one of these mobile instruments, correct?
There can be, definitely.
And what is meant by configuration of an instrument?
It's it's only going to be configurable from the radio operation point of view, not much configuration for a GPS. The GPS device is totally self-contained, not configurable by this information. But when I'm investigating issues, frequently, we would have to extract data from a radio to find out if there were problems with the configuration from a radio talk, listen, data point of view. Not really relevant to the GPS. There's very little configuration for a GPS, just, if you have enabled or not the features, and they did not configure any features. So it was really just the one feature that Motorola uses itself, which is to speed up GPS lock on a power up. So we store the last reading on a power down.
And what kind of issues can result from the configuration of one of these instruments?
From non frequencies in the radio, so that you couldn't find a site to communicate with dispatch. There's the frequencies themselves have identifiers that could be configured wrong. You could have problems with any one of the features that are involved in the radio, like, they could have misconfigured the emergency feature so that it only sent the alarm, not the alarm and a subsequent call. All sorts of configuration issues could explain complaints.
You also mentioned that sometimes in your job with Motorola, you would deal with customers' complaints. What is the nature of the customer's complaints that you would deal with?
They would say that, there was garbled audio. There could be, they couldn't communicate with, in a certain location, that the radio shuts off, that the radio, it could be anything. Could be anything from hardware. It could be a problem with the system that, you can't reach the system from your location. It was all sorts of reasons I've dealt with. They're countless.
As with all other technology, this technology that you've been describing sometimes has technical issues, correct?
Sure, yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Christie, thank you very much. You are excused. You may go about your business. Thank you.
State calls Laredo Police Officer Alberto Cortez.
Yes, yes, sir. Get a couple of water.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I would ask you just to sit close to that mic so the court reporter can hear you.
Yes, of course.
Speak up nice and loud, please. Can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Alberto Cortez Jr.
And how are you currently employed?
with the City of Laredo as a police officer.
Okay. How long have you been with the police department?
18 years.
Okay, and what type of duties do you have?
I am currently a patrol officer. I work shift work. I patrol the streets for all of my 18 years as a patrolman.
As part of working the streets, do you respond to emergency calls?
Yes, sir, that is correct. Every type and any type of call.
And are you a licensed peace officer
Yes, sir, that is correct.
in the state of Texas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to focus your attention to April the 9th, 2018. Do you remember that day?
Yes, sir,
Were you on duty that morning?
that is correct.
Okay. What time did you come on duty that morning?
At 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And what was going to be your shift?
That morning, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay. Did you receive any calls on that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what type of call you received.
That morning, more or less around 11:30 a.m., I received a call of a female down by Bristol and Riverbank Road, which is located in Mines Road, with lacerations to her head. While en route to that call, my dispatchers informed me that she was possibly deceased.
Okay. And did you proceed to that area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I ask you to show the jury where you arrived and what you did when you arrived on the map?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor?
Yeah. Yes. Can you put that, turn that on and put it in your pocket and put that on your tie?
Just clip it on your tie, officer. There you go.
Thank you.
Yes.
So what I'm going to ask you to do, you just testified that you got a call to respond to Father McNamara Park
Yes, off of Bristol, yes.
off of Bristol. Can you identify Bristol on this map?
Yes, this is Bristol. If the map extended further, Mines Road is here, and it intersects with Bristol Road. So I proceeded north on Mines, and then west on Bristol Road.
Okay. Did you gain entry into the park area?
Yes, at the very end, there was a gate that was already open. Upon arrival, the ambulance, the City of Laredo paramedics, the ambulance was already parked outside. I parked, and I walked down to the trail.
Okay. Did you come in contact with anybody when you got there?
Yes, while on my way down, two paramedics were on the way up, and I asked them more or less, where is everybody? They said, follow the dirt trail, and you'll see the body, and you see the USBP agents down there.
Okay. Did you come in contact with a BP agent by the name of Dennison?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So show the jury on this map where you parked your car. You can show
Okay.
with your finger, and then the path you walked to the
Okay.
area where the agents were.
So, again, here on Bristol, I walked on foot due to the fact that the dirt path trail, very bumpy, didn't think my unit would make it. I don't want to get stuck. So when I walked all the way down the trail, this part right here looks like an island. This is where BP units were stationed. 4 to 5 United States Border Patrol agents were located here. And a motionless, lifeless female body was about right here. She was facing eastbound. And upon me being a police officer, secured the crime scene, look for any evidence, any clues, anything out of the ordinary. As I began to canvass the crime scene, in better words, I was walking around this grassy on the edge. There was one USBP agent, Agent Dennison, already ahead of me. He was already south. I passed the female body. I did look at her. I observed she was barefooted. She was face down. Lots of blood. Can you hear me? Yes, lots of blood around her upper middle torso on the dirt. And continuing my path southbound, I saw blood drops on the dirt. At this time, Agent Dennison said out loud, I found another body.
Okay. Stop right there.
Okay.
Have a seat. Thank you. Pictures of the female.
So if you're just joining us, this is Alberto Cortez Jr. from the Laredo Police Department. he received a call with a female with lacerations to the head. While en route, he was informed that she was possibly deceased. When he arrived, he said that the female was barefoot, face down, with lots of blood. He then saw some blood drops in the dirt, and then he heard Agent Dennison, who we heard Agent Dennison's testimony yesterday, and that video just now uploaded, so make sure to check it out. But Agent Dennison yelled out that he had also found another body.
Now, you said that you saw a lot of blood.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna show you this blood. States Exhibit 254. Is this the type of blood that you saw?
That is correct, sir.
You also said that there was, and you didn't walk on the. Where were you walking? Let me ask you that much.
On the grass, where the grass and the dirt meet, right on that
So you stayed on the
boundary.
edge of the
Yes.
path. You did not disturb the dirt path.
No, sir.
Okay. And here, for example, is States Exhibit 229. Some of the blood drops that you saw.
That is correct.
States Exhibit 255. You recognize what's in 255?
Yes, sir. That is what I saw.
What is the vantage point from here?
Where USBP agents, they were north of where this blood was at. This is where the female body was at.
So what direction are we looking at here?
South.
Okay.
Southbound.
And you walk along which side here, looking at this image?
I walk on the right side, the east side.
Okay.
The west side, I'm sorry.
Because you walk on the west side grass.
Yes, where the cones are of 2, 3 on that.
Okay. Now those cones weren't there when you got there, correct?
No, those markers were not.
In fact, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, were you the first officer that arrived?
Yes, that is correct.
You were the first official Laredo police officer to arrive,
Yes.
and this location falls within your jurisdiction.
No. Each officer is assigned a certain area. I got dispatched to be there.
No, but what I'm saying, that's within the city limits.
Oh, yes, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, so this is within the city limits?
Yes.
What county is this?
Webb County.
So the body's in the city of Laredo and Webb County.
Yes.
What do you do as the first responding police officer?
First thing is obviously a crime scene is secure the crime scene.
And what does that entail?
To preserve as much evidence, not to let anyone of unauthorized personnel try to destroy any evidence. So therefore, us officers, we have crime scene tape, the yellow crime scene tape. So I began to secure the crime scene tape around the grass area.
So you are the person that put the crime scene tape up that morning?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, you told the jury that you see a female.
Yes.
Okay. You've described that there was a lot of blood.
Yes.
Okay. What was your impression of what had happened?
Any prudent person will see a lifeless, motionless body to come to the conclusion that she was deceased.
But at that time, the opinion as to how she was deceased, based on what you're seeing, what you're assessing, are you making an assessment?
No, she was brutally attacked.
Now
Mr. on the approach, please.
I want to pick up where you said you saw Agent Dennison.
Okay.
Okay. You were testifying that he was on the same west side of the brush where you were, right?
That is correct.
Okay. You also testified that he said that there was a body.
That is correct.
Okay. What happens at that point? Or what
So-
do you do at that point?
At that point, he was ahead of me, southbound. When I heard him say, "I found another body," I walked towards his direction, to his location. He was no longer on the dirt path. He was in the brush. And when I arrived there at the brush with Agent Dennison, I observed a motionless little boy as well.
Describe, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you saw, or when you saw the little boy. If you can describe what you saw.
Of course. Little brown booties, little brown boy booties, blue jeans that were covered in blood, freshly haircut, and what caught more of my attention was the way the body was positioned, he was placed. He wasn't thrown, he was placed. It's as if someone had placed him down.
Did you see any injuries to the baby?
Yes, lots of blood around the neck area, and that came down. I said again, blood on the blue jeans as well.
Okay. Permission to approach him.
Just a trigger warning. This is a Texas capital murder case. This man, Ronald Burgos-Aviles, is alleged to have murdered his mistress. She had previously been his mistress. She was not at the time. He was married during the time, and she had a baby with him. She wanted to get child support to help her pay her bills. And at the time of these murders, Dominic was 18 and she was 28. He was also a Border Patrol agent supervisor. Now, they won't show any photos to us that are extremely graphic, so I don't think we really need to worry about that. But we will see photos like we just saw with blood and that kind of thing. Meanwhile, thank you for being here and watching this with us. I appreciate you being here.
I will now be tendering to present Exhibit 26, 24, 25.
And if you're new here, Ronald Burgos is the one sitting next to the attorney with the bun in her hair.
These are, I think, already, or we'll move to introduce them into evidence.
Which ones are they again?
This will be State's Exhibit.
24, 25, and 26?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are you offering?
Yes.
Any objection?
No objections, Ronald.
Admitted without objection.
Grizelda Hernandez
That'll be
is
states 24,
the mother
25,
that
and
was
26.
murdered. She also had another little boy. Also, Ronald was married at the time, and he had 2 other children as well.
Can the witness step down so we can show them?
We're out here.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 26. And if you can identify and you recognize this.
Yes, now I remember the T-shirt. Yes, sir.
Did you see any other injuries on the baby? How close were you to the baby?
Standing right over the body.
How many injuries did you observe on the baby at that time?
I only observed one,
And that was to.
the neck area.
Did you notice any cuts, incisions, or tears on the shirt?
No, no damage, just the blood.
So the shirt is intact.
Yes, sir.
The baby you said was wearing jeans,
Yes, sir.
and I'm showing you States Exhibit 25. You said you recognize these jeans,
Yes.
and you said that he had a large amount of blood on it. And what was the conditions of the jeans?
Blood-soaked jeans.
And finally, you said that he was wearing. What was he wearing on his feet?
Brown booties. Brown little boy booties.
States Exhibit 24.
Yes, sir.
Permission to publish these to jury. I'm just going to show.
I don't need to,
Just to show it to them.
they see it already.
What do you do after that, after you find the baby?
At that point, I began to secure the crime scene with the crime scene yellow tape. Right before that, I did also locate a white, off-white woman's shoe that was in the general vicinity from where I was standing. I began to do the crime scene tape in a way of a path, knowing that investigators and other authorized personnel would be making their way down to this crime scene. So I formed a path with the crime scene tape so they could follow when they arrived.
And Agent Dennison was in front of you this whole
Yes,
time?
he was with me. Yes, yes, sir.
And you were with him when the shoe was found?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What else did you do that morning with respect to your duties in this case?
After the scene was secured,
Yes.
I told Agent Dennison if he could escort me back to my patrol unit, which was in the very top of Bristol, if he was willing to provide a voluntary statement.
Okay. And did you have the opportunity to hand out statements?
Yes, to Agent Dennison.
Okay, just to him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember his demeanor at the time?
He was, while we were back in my patrol unit where I keep my voluntary statements, my paperwork, something important was broadcasted over our radio, and
Let me stop you.
I'm
there.
sorry.
When you said something was broadcasted over your radio, which radio are you talking about?
my assigned portable unit that's issued by the Laredo Police Department.
Are you wearing that today?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And that radio, you had it on that morning?
Yes, sir.
And is it audible,
Yes.
loud,
Yes, yes, sir.
and you hear communications?
Yes, sir. That morning I had it on my chest with a clip. The only reason I have it here today is for the tie.
Okay. And what communication came over the radio that morning?
It was broadcasted, possible suspect, Burgos. that was broadcasted over my P unit, portable unit.
What was your reaction at that time? But when you heard Burgos, what did that did it mean anything to you at all?
No, sir.
Did Dennison?
Dennison was in close proximity where he could hear the broadcast on my radio.
Did he have any reaction?
He was appalled.
How do you know? What was his demeanor?
He was in shock.
Objection, Your Honor. This witness cannot testify as to what somebody else, some others perceived.
I'm asking about his demeanor when he heard the broadcast. Dennison was in front of him. He can testify as to what the agent's physical demeanor was when the broadcast came out.
We'll stick with the demeanor, but nothing with regard to what he said, sir. Witness has been instructed. You understand that?
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
Thank
I'm
you.
asking only his. You have your radio.
Yes, sir.
The name Burgos comes out.
Yes, sir.
It means nothing to you.
No, sir.
Do you see a physical change in Agent Dennison?
Yes, sir.
To you, what do you see this physical change?
He was in shock.
Okay. What makes you say that? Without anything he may have said, what makes you give
The head jerking to the back, the typical of any person when you're in shock, the movement of your head, the opening of the eyes, the nodding of the head. He wasn't shocked.
Did you document that?
Yes, sir.
Pass a witness.
Good morning, Officer.
Hi, good morning.
Officer, at what time did you arrive at the crime scene?
I'm sorry, Mr. Peña, just one favor. Just turn it towards you. Thank you.
At what time did you arrive at the crime scene?
By the time I was dispatched, not maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 12, 15 minutes.
At what time of the day would that have been?
This was in the morning. I believe the call was sent out, dispatched to us around 11:30-ish a.m.
So you must have arrived about 11:45, more or less?
More or less, that is correct, sir.
And you said that you began to secure the crime scene?
Yes, sir.
So until you began to secure the crime scene had not been secured, correct?
That is correct.
And there were many law enforcement officers, border patrol agents, and EMTs at the scene when you arrived, correct?
The EMTs were already back on the way up on the trail, and there were about 4 to 5 United States Border Patrol agents.
And you saw Mr. Burgos there at the scene as well?
I saw many of them, yes. But sitting here, I recognize him, yes.
And he appeared to be in shock as well as Agent Dennison, correct?
No.
That was not your impression?
No, sir.
So you're saying that he appeared to be normal to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a real quick break so that we can push it a little bit. We won't break at 12, so depending on the witnesses' situations, we'll see where we go. But for now, we'll take a quick break. Inside of 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
All right, Mr.
All right, they're going to take about a 10-minute break. While they do that, I'd like to go back over the prosecution's opening statement for any of you that are not familiar with this case. The prosecution, Ronald Burgos, has pled not guilty on April 9th, 2018. He was a supervisor as a Border Patrol agent, and he had been a Border Patrol agent for 9 years. So the morning of April 9th, he goes to receive his assignment and his kilo unit, which is the green border truck. They call those the kilo units. He invites a young woman, his secret lover, and the child they have together to a park. It's a dense brush area near the Rio Grande River. He tells the woman to park her car and walk to the secret meeting area. His intention, allegedly, was to set up an ambush, and he parks his truck at the end of a trail. He lies in wait, hiding, waiting for her to get close to the truck. Around 9:45 a.m., he comes out of the brush and, violently clenching a knife, attacks the young woman. Her name was Grizelda Hernandez, and her 18-month-old child, Dominic Hernandez, who was also Ronald Burgos' child. His plan was made to make it look like smugglers had attacked her. These were all areas that Burgos had patrolled before. Prosecution said that Grizelda fought back hard, and Ronald's intention was basically to get rid of the baby. Hi, Donna. Ronald allegedly stabbed Grizelda 27 times to stop her from protecting her baby. He stabbed her in the head, the face, the shoulders, the backs, the arm, the ear. She was almost unrecognizable. The defensive wounds on her hands were horrific. It was so violent that she even lost her shoes off of her feet. And when he was done with Grizelda, while she was holding the stroller with her baby Dominic in it, as she lay there deceased, he walks back to the stroller. He gets in front of Dominic, unstraps the buckle to take him out, and the mom's blood is found on those straps where he unbuckled. And that most likely is as she fought to keep him from taking the baby. He then takes the 18-month-old to the brush area. He lays him down, covers his eyes with his Baby Yoda shirt, and then he stabs him in the sternum. But Dominic did not die. So he then cut his carotid and jugular arteries. The baby was left drenched in blood. He then staged a crime, having a head start as a trained law enforcement agent. He grabbed the baby's cell phone that he played, the little babies play the games on, and he throws the stroller into the brush. He grabs a shoe, he throws it into a tall grass area. Then he grabs Grizelda's phone, but with adrenaline and panic, he starts to make some mistakes and things start moving a little too fast for him. In his truck, he places the two phones under his Border Patrol vest on the passenger side. During the struggle, though, he lost his belt keeper. It was stepped on and blood droplets fell on it. He threw that in the truck and it landed under the front seat. So they believe that these murders took place between 9:49 and 10:10 a.m. And they know this from his truck's GPS system. And that's what we just saw testimony on. First thing this morning, sorry. So they did not ever find the knife that he used or any bloodstained clothes of Ronald's. When he left the brush area, there is a DPS camera set up and it shows his truck driving by. They also have camera footage of him driving through the city after the murders. The baby's blood was found on the back tailgate of the truck. Now, there's also video footage of his home from his neighbor's camera around 10:15 a.m. And interestingly enough, the neighbor was also a Border Patrol agent, but these two were friends. Their kids played together, and he knew Agent Burgos's wife and what have you. So this CCTV footage shows Burgos getting out of his government vehicle in shorts and tennis shoes. And they played that yesterday. If you haven't watched it, it would be day 2 afternoon session. So he gets out of his government vehicle in his shorts and his tennis shoes. He had gone to work that morning in his full green uniform. He was home about 10 minutes, and then he dressed into another uniform and goes back to the scene. Other agents see him speeding and driving erratically, and he turns around, drives back to the park, trying to get back to that area where those bodies are. He then runs into 2 Border Patrol agents, and he asks them what's over there, pointing to that brush area, and asks if they know if there is an exit. They say they don't think so, but he can go check, so he does. He then gets on his radio saying he needs help. He's found a dead body and requests an ambulance. So the prosecutor then goes back to the beginning. Grizelda had met a man named Anthony. Now, you got to remember the name Anthony, not Ronald, but Anthony, in 2015. He was married with 2 little boys, and these 2 had a secret relationship, or they called friends with benefits. But she got pregnant in 2015. And on July 26, 2016, Dominic was born. After that point, Dominic was provided for by his mom and her family, not Anthony. Grizelda wanted to become a nurse like her older sister, and so she wanted to go to school, right? The family did not know much about this relationship Grizelda had with this gentleman. Grizelda was paying for daycare with her student loans, and she needed some help, paying her bills and the daycare. So she did what every woman should do, and she went to the court to begin the process of getting child support from his father. In January of 2018, she asked Anthony, quote unquote, for help. But anytime she brought it up, he deflected. But they said, he never showed any anger over it. He just would deflect from it. He never called Dominic by his name, only the baby. So in March of 2018, he was served for child support. He then, for the first time, tells Grizelda that he wants to meet Dominic, and he tells her this through Facebook Messenger. He tells her that within a few weeks, she won't want to be his friend anymore, which is also interesting. On March 24th, he says he wants to see them the next day, March 25th. So she gets a text to meet him at the park. Grizelda goes to meet Anthony at the park with the baby. Meanwhile, she hands the baby to his dad while she goes to her car to grab something. And when she comes back, Dominic is screaming. And she gets scared, so she takes the baby back and she says she needs to go. Well, they go to her sister's home, and her sister is a nurse. And they look over the baby and they find a very small wound on him. But they think that maybe it's just a spider bite or, something poisonous. And at this point, Grizelda was not really, she wasn't feeling like she was in any danger, nor was her baby. March 25th through April 9th, Dominic's leg did not heal, and it got so bad that Dominic was unable to stand or walk. He was crawling and dragging himself around. Grizelda takes him to a pediatrician the very next day after it happened. She told the doctor she thought it was a spider bite, so they followed treatment and protocol for, what they would do for a spider bite, and basically it was antibiotics. On his left thigh, there was a tiny hole. On April 9th, she goes to meet, quote unquote, Anthony, using her sister's Mercedes. They go to Chick-fil-A to buy some chicken nuggets. She tells her sister that she's going to meet with Anthony. Grizelda loads the baby in the stroller, and she makes a 10 to 15 minute walk down the trail to meet up. Using the license plate number, law enforcement goes to Grizelda's sister's home. And her sister tells them that Grizelda went to the park to meet baby daddy, Anthony. This was broadcast, and Ronald hears it. He then switches to a cell so the call can't be heard. They see Anthony and ask if that's who he is. Ronald says his name is Ronald Anthony Burgos-Aviles, and they tell him to disarm. They then put him in a police unit, and that contains audio and video. They said Anthony was licking and wiping his arm, and he says, "Telefono, where are the phones?" he had left those 2 cell phones in his work truck at the crime scene under his vest. And so later on, the doctor would testify that it was a 14 to 18 gauge needle that caused the hole in Dominic's leg. And in Ronald's lunchbox, law enforcement found syringe and needles. So at this point, they have not told us what they believe was in that syringe, but the pictures were pretty awful. Her sister, the nurse, also testified that the blood that was coming out of that little hole was black. She knew that that was not normal. So being a nurse, she knew it had to have been something poisonous. She just didn't know what, but they never, they had no reason to think that it would be anything nefarious. And then the defense opening, they said that on April 9th, 2018, prior to that date, Ronald had a home with his wife, Amy, who is also a U.S. Customs Border Patrol agent, and their 2 young sons. He says this is an anomaly in Ronald's life, and he's fighting for his life. He says the state or life in prison without parole. And so the defense asked the jury to use discretion when listening to witnesses and viewing evidence. It was possibly one of the worst opening defense statements I've ever heard, except for Letitia Stout case, because that was really bad. But this one, it was very short. Really, that is all they said. That was it. So my guess is that they are going to try to prove, well, first of all, in yesterday's testimony, the defense tried to make it clear. So everybody only knew of Ronald as Anthony. They didn't know his name was Ronald, and they didn't know anything about his background or his family. He had told Grizelda that he was separated, that his wife was living in Florida. So she didn't know any of this, and her sister had never seen them together. She had never seen him in person either. So I think that the defense is going to try to say, well, how do you truly know it was this guy, because nobody ever saw them together? But also they're going to go after the cell phone data and say it's not reliant. But I think they're going to have a really hard time with that. I believe there's probably plenty of evidence in this case to convict him. If you haven't already watched the first 2 days, this trial just started Monday. And during the last 2 days, I didn't do lives. I was doing videos on them, but it became way too difficult to watch the trial all day and then try to upload video clips. It was like 12, 13-hour days, and they weren't getting that many views. So this morning when I got ready to begin, I thought, you know what? I'm not going to spend all that time on it, because I will do a live and it'll probably get just as many views without all that extra work that's just not necessary. Bruin Hell, I noticed yesterday he didn't show much emotion about Grizelda, but showed something for the baby. Yeah, he did seem to, and I think I even wrote that in my notes, that at some point he did seem a little bit emotional. Let's see if I can find that. Probably not. So they still have a few more minutes. I might be able to go over Grizelda's sister's, some of her testimony. It was pretty long. Her name is Angelica Hernandez, and she is an RN. She testified that her sister had 2 children. The other, his name is Jaden, and he was 6 at the time of her death. So Grizelda does have another child. Grizelda was a single mother. She was in her 2nd year of college, prereqs for nursing, and her sister said Dominic was a very active child. He had been walking until 2 weeks prior to these murders when his dad, Ronald, allegedly hurt him. And she knew Anthony Burgos as the presumed father. She said that the two, her sister and Anthony, had met online, and that her sister had talked about the child support because she needed financial assistance. In the state of Texas, in order to receive state help for the daycare, you must have an open child support case. So that's why she had to go through the courts for it. Let's see. Let's go to the time. Okay, so after Grizelda takes Dominic to the park to meet up with Anthony that first time. Now, up until then, Anthony had, or Ronald, as we know, had nothing to do with the child. He said he wouldn't even call him by his name. But all of a sudden, after the whole child support thing, now he wants to meet the baby, and he has her meet him at a park. But so they come back from the park, and her sister said that Grizelda laid down on the couch, but her sister Angie could hear him saying, "Owie, owie." Dominic is saying "owie," and he was kind of moaning and stuff still after about 20 minutes. So Angie took off Dominic's clothes, and when she did, she saw a dot of blood on his thigh, like where, one would get a shot. So she asked Grizelda if he'd recently had any shots, and Grizelda, with wide open eyes, responded she had not, that Dominic had not recently had any. So Grizelda starts to panic at that time. Angie wiped the area where the blood had been found, and the blood coming out was discolored. It was black, not red. So Angie's first thought was he had received a shot, but then thought maybe an insect bite. She knew the black blood meant poison, so she asked what happened at the park, and was he left alone with his dad at any time. Grizelda went on to tell Angie about what happened when she went to her car. That she had left, Dominic alone for a few minutes while she went to grab some stuff out of her car. She'd come back and he was crying hysterically. So Angie told Grizelda that they need to take him to the ER immediately, and they go. Before they left, Angie had taken pictures of this hole in his thigh, as well as the blood that had come out due to it being so abnormal. And they did show those photos, progression from the beginning of the incidents over time. She said that during that time, Dominic went from being a normal 18-month-old to not being able to walk anymore. In fact, her sister eventually even had to ask Angie for one of the little baby walkers because he just wasn't able to walk. So it appears that what we've come to know now is that Ronald allegedly tried to poison Dominic 16 days before the murders occurred. And Grizelda's sister went on to explain the incident, the text between her and sister, and the aftermath. And I believe that this is the point, Bruinhell, that because I wrote in my notes to pay attention to the reactions of Ronald Burgos, and I believe that it was during that time that he did show some emotion. The sister, it was heartbreaking testimony from her. As a nurse, my guess is that, she probably feels some kind of responsibility, but by not recognizing that his injury wasn't by a poisonous spider, she truly would have had no reason to think any differently. Angelica then went on to testify about the day of the murders, April 9th. Her sister had plans to take Dominic to San Antonio to have him checked out by pediatricians on that Wednesday. Now, the 9th was on a Monday. So Ronald, wanted to meet with Dominic before she took him to San Antonio to see a doctor. It's kind of interesting. So he asked Grizelda to meet him at a park that was only a few blocks away from their home. Grizelda and her sister had grown up playing there when they were young children. So Grizelda told her sister and her nephew goodbye, that she loved them, and that's the last time that she ever saw them alive. So at that point, I think it's kind of important to remember that the only name her sister and family knew Ronald by was Anthony Burgos. After that visit, Grizelda was supposed to pick Angie up, but she never showed, and Angie said it was just extremely unlike her. She then receives a call from a detective asking if she was the owner of the car they'd found abandoned. And she said, my car's not abandoned. You know, my sister has it. She's meeting her baby's daddy there.
Officer Benavides.
She said later when she found out they were deceased, she said she knew at that point that Ronald had
Good
hurt the
morning,
baby
sir.
2 weeks earlier.
You can
And
swear
she
in us?
recounted this to law enforcement
Thank you.
and
Please have
the
a seat
coroner,
over here. Thank you.
and she begged them to look further into
Pull up
his
your
leg
chair to the
injury.
mic, and we'll get started.
All right, we're back. Thank you for being here, you guys. I appreciate you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll just ask you to speak into the mic loud and clear so the court reporter can pick up your testimony, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Gilberto Benavides.
Okay, and how are you employed?
I am a sergeant with the Laredo Police Department.
And how long have you been a police officer?
20 years with the city of Laredo and 4 years prior with the Webb County Sheriff, so 24 together.
That you've been a licensed peace officer for 24 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, were you employed with the Laredo Police Department on April the 9th of 2018?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. Were you on shift that day?
Yes, sir, I was.
And do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall being dispatched out to Father Magdalene Park on that day?
Yes, sir, I responded as the call came in.
Okay, so tell me the nature of your call that morning.
So I heard over the radio, approximately about 11:30 in the morning, dispatch was dispatching EMS and police to the dead end of Bristol and Allen for an injured person, a female with lacerations to the head, is what I heard on the initial call.
Okay, and as part of dispatch, does Laredo Police Department maintain business records regarding the activity of who responded and who was there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 9. Ask you to examine those documents. Do you recognize what's in this document?
Yes.
What's contained?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do they fairly and accurately depict the records maintained by the police department
Yes, sir.
on that morning?
Correct. Yes, sir.
We move to introduce State's Exhibit
No
9.
objections, Your Honor.
I admit it, without objection.
Thank you. We may make reference to this during your testimony, and I'll ask you to
Thank you.
refer to that. Do you remember your call sign?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is your call sign?
6018.
Okay. Do you remember are you able to determine what time the call came in?
Date time received was 4/9/18 at 11:33 a.m.
At 11:30. So that's when you yourself head over there?
Yes, that's when I hear the call and I start making my way over there.
Okay. Now, the ladies and gentlemen jury where you responded to and the route that you took.
Okay. So as I'm hearing the radio, I'm monitoring it. Eventually, it's broadcast over the radio that the person is deceased at scene, so that I definitely need to respond to there, right, as part of my duties. So I make my way down Bristol to Allen towards the dead end, and I park my unit close to that open gate on Bristol and Allen.
Now let me ask you, at that point in time, how many years were you on PD with PD?
I want to say approximately 18 years.
Okay, and you were a detective?
Yes, correct.
And assigned to what unit at that time?
I was assigned to the Capers, or Crimes Against Persons Division.
And what type of crimes do they investigate?
We investigate anything that involves crime against a person, so assaults, homicide, robbery, that type of nature of calls and reports.
Yes. Okay, so then continue on with you arriving, you said, on Bristol.
So I arrive at the dead end of Bristol and Allen. That is what we considered almost the river banks, right? We know that beyond that gate, it's all dirt and brush, and beyond that, it's the river, the international Rio Grande River. I noticed that there's a gate there open. I meet up with Officer Cortez, who's by his unit, parked similar to where I arrived. And he tells me that he's picking up voluntary statement forms and that he's going to take them back down towards where the crime scene was. And I followed him.
Do you make it to the crime scene?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, what, if anything, do you see arriving at the crime scene?
So it's a dirt road, and it's kind of hard to get in there, so we have to walk. Unless you have a truck or an ATV, you have to walk in there. So we make our way down the dirt road. It's a distance. On my right-hand side, I could see a clearing, which I considered, which is the soccer fields. I see some Border Patrol units on my right-hand side. I continue walking towards where the road splits up into a Y. On the left-hand side, I can see 2 Border Patrol units. I can see officers. I can see Border Patrol agents talking.
Okay. Now, when you do arrive, what else do you see?
So
What do you do?
As I approach the Border Patrol units and the cluster of officers and agents there, I can see Investigator Ray Garcia talking to some Border Patrol agents. I believe he's taking statements or IDing them. Someone points out towards the direction where the body was, or the victim. And I can see from a short distance from where the Border Patrol trucks were parked, I can see the victim laying across the road.
Okay. Your Honor, may you step down so we can make reference to the map? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to put on the mic. Just clip it to your tie.
I believe originally they said that this was something like a 10-minute walk down this dirt road. I mean, he really wanted to get her out in the middle of nowhere.
So we can give the jury a visual.
Women, please be careful. Don't ever do that. Always meet in a public spot with other people around.
Gain access to.
Okay.
See.
So again, when I arrive, it's the dead end of Bristol. Too close to this mic. I walk. This is the dirt road that I mentioned. It's a long ways walk. I can see the soccer field here. I can see the Border Patrol.
Mr. Alexander, a minute ago there was a juror that was having trouble seeing you. So can you? Is there any way you can just continue to do it from this angle here? Only because I know there's a juror there on the left, very, very far right-hand side that has trouble when the officer is pointing things out. Thank you.
Is that okay right here?
He's so smug looking.
Don't worry about me. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the juror.
Yes. So, again, continuing, I arrive here, I walk down the road, Border Patrol, two trucks or Border Patrol units here. I can see them from here as I'm walking. This is where I say the road breaks into a kind of a Y. I'm led down here. This is where I can see the two Border Patrol agents. This is where I run into the cluster of officers.
Let me stop you right there. I've got a close up. This is, you're testifying from 100. I'm gonna now pick up a little more of a zoomed in map on 101, okay?
Again, the Border Patrol units here, two units. I can see off from where I was standing the body of our victim from here.
Okay. What else do you do next?
As I'm arriving, I can see the victim. I can see that officers are establishing a crime scene. Based on what I see and how I find the victim, I decide that we need a bigger crime scene. So I start giving instructions to move our crime scene further out into the north side, correction, to the south side, and around the trucks.
So you set up a perimeter.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and after you set up a perimeter, are you able to identify if any other victims were found?
So as I'm setting up the perimeter, and not long from when I arrive, an agent calls out that they find a second body of a baby.
Okay. And what do you do at this point?
At this point, I want to, again, because from where I'm at, I can't see where the baby was, right? So I need to get to where he's calling out from. So without walking on the dirt road and the evidence on the dirt road, I go through the brush line, and I get to where Agent Dennison was with the baby.
And do you in fact see a deceased baby?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You said you identified a female.
Correct.
Can you describe the scene around the female, what you saw?
Yeah, the victim, she was, like I said, she was laying across the road. She was facing away from where I was, so she was facing this way. From where I was standing, I can see that she was completely covered in blood. Her hair, her body, her arms. She was wearing a sleeve without, a blouse without sleeves, so I can see a lot of blood around her. The dirt all around her was completely covered in blood.
All right, let's go on a question and answer basis, please.
Okay, so there's a lot of blood.
Yes.
You find the baby, Dennison finds the baby.
Correct.
Is there any other evidence that is found after the baby is found?
So as I'm walking towards where the baby was, I can see a lot of evidence along the road. I could see blood on rocks, blood on the sticks that were there, blood on debris. I can see the blood in the trail where it was leading to the baby.
An approximate distance of the blood trail from where the body lied.
Again, I couldn't see the baby, but afterwards I would say it's 20, 25 yards from where the baby and the body was.
That's a blood trail.
No.
Or blood splat. What do you see? What do you see?
I see blood spatter. I see droplets, some bigger than others, but it leads to that area over here where.
Okay, what is that? As a homicide detective, what does that tell you, if anything?
It tells me that there was blood transfer from the victim from way back here to where we can see the blood all the way to where she was laying.
So she moved from.
She moved from one point to the other as when she had blood on her.
Okay. After the baby's found, is there any evidence found on the east side of the?
Yes. So from where I'm at with the baby, officers again are establishing the crime scene, and they call out that they find a baby stroller. So I look in the direction where the officers were pointing out the stroller.
Okay, and what was, if you can, did you see the stroller?
Yes.
Okay, and please describe the condition of the stroller.
So where I'm standing with baby Dominic, I can see that the stroller is directly across from where he's at, across from the dirt road. It was a black and gray stroller. It was on its side, directly across from baby Dominic's.
Okay, how far from the road was the stroller?
Maybe 15, 20 feet from the road to inside or towards the brush.
And do you remember the condition of the stroller?
Yes, it was on its side. It was obvious to me. It was obvious to me that that stroller was thrown in there because of the vegetation, the brush. It was high. There's no way that stroller could have been rolling there, so someone grabbed it and threw it into the brush.
Okay, so I'm gonna show you now, State's Exhibit 39. You can help me. She can come in. The officer, I need the stroller.
So he just threw the stroller into the brush. Complete disregard.
I'm showing you the mark State's Exhibit 39. Okay, I'm gonna open
Well, remember, allegedly, he wanted to make it look like smugglers had gotten to Grizelda and Dominic. It almost makes the case even worse considering he was a supervisor for the United States Border Patrol. He was also in uniform at the time that he committed these. Oh Lord, so that's the stroller. I wonder if her sister's in court today. Yesterday afternoon, they tried to declare a mistrial because one of the Border Patrol agents, as well as Grizelda's sister, really got emotional in the courtroom. The judge denied it, but defense did try to declare a mistrial.
State's Exhibit 39. Move to introduce State's Exhibit 39.
No objections, Your Honor.
Admitted. Okay. Without objection.
Try to open
Put it up higher on your, a little bit, there you go. Thank you.
Tell ladies and gentlemen, jury, what's in front of you here.
It's the stroller that I saw that day.
And this was the stroller that was thrown.
Yes, it was thrown directly across from where baby Dominic was.
How many wheels does this stroller have?
It has 4 wheels.
Okay. Based on seeing the stroller, what, if anything, did you do next?
So based on what we had there in front of us. And once I noticed that the stroller was there, I noticed some tire marks or impressions from the stroller all along that dirt road. I noticed that because of how the wheels are set up now, I can see that on the dirt that it was leaving impressions of 2 wheels. And that's what I noticed.
And when you see those impressions, what, if anything, were you going to do when you saw those impressions?
I knew that from where we were at, there was no way. Someone had to walk from there, and she had to walk from somewhere. So I decided that I was going to follow those impressions on the dirt to see if I could get to where the car, or at least to where they started from.
Okay, have a seat.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you now what's being marked. State's exhibit. Do you have a seat?
I'm just going to turn off this mic real quick.
Just leave it on just in case. Turn it off and do it.
I'm going to show you what's been marked at State's Exhibit 117. 138. 139. I'm going to show you 140. 141. 143. And 144. Do you recognize the images depicted in these photos?
Yes, I do.
Do they fairly and accurately depict what you saw there on April the 9th of 2018?
Yes,
Have
they
they
do.
been altered in any way?
No.
We move to introduce State's Exhibits 144, 143, 141, 140, 139, and 138.
They were admitted.
Okay. Okay. So you told the ladies of the jury that you proceeded to follow the stroller marks.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what State's Exhibit 141. Ask if you could identify what you see in this photo.
Yes, I can see the double markings or impressions from the stroller on the dirt that I followed that day.
Are you able to identify what's up here?
It's our victim.
The stroller mark, the victim is laying on the stroller marks.
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And you testified that the distance from the victim to the point where the stroller marks found, or where the stroller was found, was how much distance?
Approximately 20 to 25 yards, I can imagine.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 140.
Yes, again with the stroller marks, you can see the double lines on both sides. It's along the dirt road.
Were you able to conclude where the stroller marks stopped
Yes,
on that road?
yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 117.
So here, where the stick is in the rock, on one side it's baby Dominic.
Okay, so if you're standing looking south, if you can give the jury that perspective, what are we seeing here?
So if I'm standing facing south, here are these tire markings where, to me, it looks like that it was moved from side to side, or it changed direction. You can see that south there is no more, right, tire marks. And towards my left, if I'm facing south, it would be Dominic's body, and to my right, it would be the stroller.
So the movement of the wheels left and right is where it stopped,
Yes,
and the stroller was then found to the left,
yes,
and baby Dominic to the right.
yes. If I'm facing the markings, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you, and you also testified as to the approximate distance. I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted, State's Exhibit 147. This is an aerial view. Can you identify?
Yes.
What's in this?
So up here, if I'm looking at it, to my right would be the stroller, and up here on top of the screen would be the victim.
Okay, so I'm going to point. If this is accurate right here,
Yes,
that would be the stroller.
yes,
And down here is the victim.
yes,
And in between the victim and the stroller is between 20 to 25 yards of distance.
approximately.
Okay. To the north, what is to the north of the victim on the trail?
Towards the north would be the Father Magnolia Park.
But I'm saying immediately adjacent to the trail coming out of that brushy area.
It would be the dirt road with the same tire impressions that I followed.
Okay, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 139. What perspective do we have here?
Again, it's the double tire mark impressions from the dirt road. So if I'm looking at this picture, the crime scene or where Grizelda and Dominic would be behind it or towards the end, and then it's going towards the direction of, the picture was taken in the direction towards Father Magno, well, to the soccer fields that I called out in the map.
So, which way are we looking here?
It would be from south to north.
So we're looking north.
Yes,
Okay. And the soccer fields are located there.
yes,
Okay. You said the stroller marks continue outside that trail?
yes, correct.
And where, if anywhere, do they lead you?
From here, from this picture, they lead me to a soccer field.
Okay. I'm going to show you 143. You recognize this photo?
Yes.
Okay. What do we see here?
So again, it's the soccer field that I described, and you see the tire impressions here on the dirt.
Hopefully you all see those as well. I kind of wish they would use a pointer or something to point out some of these areas, but
These
those were
stroller
pretty
marks
easily
around the soccer
identifiable.
field, where do they lead to?
Eventually, if we're looking at this picture here, right, it kind of changes direction a little bit because I'm walking from a trail that leads this way, and then it goes, I guess, east for a little bit behind these poles or the goal post, and it changes at the end of this picture. The second goal post they go, if I'm following, right, 'cause I'm following actually in the direction these pictures were taken from. It turns left into an open gate, the dead end of Loring.
Okay. And as part of your homicide investigation, did you video what was seen here as the stroller marks?
Yes, a video was taken of the entire scene there.
Of specifically the stroller mark trail?
Yes, correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 478. You recognize
Yes,
this USB?
yes, sir.
Have you, do you know what's contained within here?
Yes,
And what's contained within
it's on-scene, crime scene video of the trail and the markings that were recorded that day.
here? Not of the bodies, just of the trails. Is that right?
Yes.
And did you initial this, Detective?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And are we moved to introduce 478?
Which one was it?
478.
No objection, Your Honor.
That one's not admitted.
This video is less than what? Less than 4 or 5 minutes long?
It's a series of videos. I don't remember how many exactly are in there, but and they're all minutes long.
Okay.
It's segmented.
So what number was that again?
478.
478, does it have files within 478? 478.1 to what?
Should be 15 videos, short videos contained within
15? So
Yes.
40, so 478.1 through 478.15 should be the sub-files in that thumb drive,
Yes, sir.
which is 478. All right, very well. And that's a description on it, Mr. Benyat, and hearing the full description that's in it, any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Very well.
As part of one
So,
of the...
so when you play it, just make sure if you do play it, whichever ones you're going to play, that you describe which file is within 478 that we're playing.
Now, as part of your investigation, did you have a drone video done of the crime scene?
There was drone footage filmed that day, but in particular in those, they were done with a video camera by forensics.
But my question is, was drone footage also done
Yes.
in the area? And I'm not saying that there was drone footage of the stroller marks. That was done with a video camera
Correct.
on the ground.
Yes.
And the drone footage is flown over the
Yes.
entire crime scene. And that's also in here? Yes?
No.
Or you haven't seen that?
No, I have not seen the drone.
Okay. We'll publish the stroller mark video. Correction, Your Honor, there's 16 miniature videos on this.
478.1 through 478.16, And the labels inside the 478 thumb drive exhibit, in fact, label them as Stakes Exhibit 478.1 through 478.16. So we're going to actually call them, instead of files, Stakes Exhibits 478.1 through 478.16. Mr. Pena?
No objections, Ron.
Very well. And that'll be the way they are admitted. They are found within Exhibit 478, Stakes Exhibit 478. Thank you. It's being played. Ms. Cullen.
Excuse me.
It's being played.
Okay, this is now 478.1. Now, there's no audio on this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, can you tell the jury what they're seeing?
This is scene or footage that was recorded during the process of the crime scene or the collection of evidence. So these are the goalposts that I can describe from that picture. Again, I walked from the opposite direction, right? If you can picture that, I walked from the crime scene that led me to this gate where I say that at the end of this gate, open gate here is the dead end of Loring. Again, this is paved road or blacktop, but over here on this side behind the poles or the goalposts, you can see the dirt and you can see the tire impressions that I spoke about or we see in the picture.
And just for the record, when you say Laurie, that's Laurie, L-O-W-R-Y, right, Laurie?
Correct.
After seeing this park footage, my guess is that that's why she probably felt safe enough to go there. And because this had been a secret affair with a baby born, you know, she probably would have understood the fact that they couldn't just meet right there in the open public,
478.2.
Thank you.
especially while he was working.
Now, do you tell the jury what they're seeing or what you can identify, if anything?
So what the recording here is that dirt road behind the goalposts that we saw in the pictures. So we moved up a little bit, and now you're going to see the actual dirt road. And this is where I could see the double markings from the stroller, the tire impressions.
Leading to where?
This is leading towards the crime scene, towards where the bodies were found, the victims. And they're just close-ups again from the tire markings on the dirt. And you can see how they lead all the way down toward where that paved road is, or the paved trail.
And the prey trail leads where?
Again, it leads back towards where we found the victims and the Border Patrol units.
Okay. How did you work following the stroller marks? What was your strategy in working the stroller marks?
Again, from when I saw the stroller, the victims, I knew that they came from somewhere. Familiar with the area, I know that people, for the most part, park at the parking lot at Father Magnavola and then walk towards those directions. So I followed those trails again, trying to stay off the dirt and on the grass. I followed them.
Right. We can pause that. So you have the stroller marks from the crime scene working north, is what you described,
Correct.
back to the trail?
Yes.
And what course of action, if any, do you take when you're on that trail?
That trail, all along towards we get to Loring where there is no more dirt, takes me, I follow the trail and it takes me to the parking lot of Father Magnable.
Okay. I don't know if you may step down so you can show the jury. Here on State's Exhibit 97, turn on your mic and show the jury where you followed the trail back to where you said the parking lot was.
Yes, so here, Grizelda Dominic, I follow right all through here, over the Border Patrol units. I go down here. This is where you see some of the pictures that were taken. I go around this island. The marks go around this island. Come out through here. Again, this is a soccer field. The goal post would be back here, and the recording again was what we saw was from here coming this way. I was doing the opposite direction when I initially walked. I walked past the goal post on this side and down to Lowry, where this gate was, and here is where I described that there is no more dirt road.
Okay, so what do you do next?
I'm familiar with the area, right? So I just continue following the paved walking trail that leads me to the main parking lots of Father Magnable Park.
What, if anything, do you see when you arrive at the parking lot?
So when I get to the parking lot, there's already units and officers with a white Mercedes there, parked here along this side here.
Okay, thank you. Have a seat.
Back to what I was saying earlier about her meeting him there.
Exhibit 107.
As far as we know, up until this point, Ronald had never shown any kind of, anything, any reason to have given her to be fearful of him. I mean, other than
Just the white Mercedes you saw that morning?
needle injection,
Yes.
but remember at the time they didn't know that's what had caused it. And so that's her sister's car
What
that
do we
she
see
borrowed
here? On 108?
to take
It's
to
the
the
white
park to meet with
Mercedes
him
where it
that
was
day.
parked, where we found it.
Okay. And 109?
It's a different angle, but the same white Mercedes where it was parked.
And what's this behind it? This field?
It's a field that they used for practices, baseball, soccer. Right over here towards, if you're looking at the picture from standing behind it, it would be a baseball park and then some extra parks to practice.
Okay. So as detective, what, if anything, do you do next that you, or let me ask you, do you approach the car?
Yes, sir, I approach.
Okay, tell us what, if anything, do you do when you approach the car?
I approach the car and I look inside the vehicle. And I could see a Chick-fil-A bag in the middle console and then the car seat in the back.
Okay. What else do you do, if anything?
The car seat plus the stroller, it gets me thinking that we have a possible vehicle. So I run the plates.
You run the plates.
Yes, the license plates, the Texas license plates.
Okay, and what do you find from that?
At that point, we find a registered owner,
And who was the registered owner?
Angelica Hernandez.
Okay. And what do you do with that information?
Along with the name, we got the address to the registered owner, which was 11411 Sierra Gorda. And I proceed to to the location.
Okay. And what if anything happens when you get to the location? Or how far was that from Father Magdalene Park?
It was within the same area. If we're familiar with the Mines Road area, it was right along Faskin, which is less than 5 minutes from where we were at Father Magdalene Park.
Okay, so you get to this house in less than 5 minutes.
Correct.
And what happens next?
There's no cars on the driveway, but I proceed to knock. And I see that the doorbell is one of those doorbells where you can communicate with someone who's not home, and I ring the doorbell.
Okay. And what happens?
I make contact with a female, and I identify myself. She identifies herself as a registered owner, Angelica, and I explain to her what I'm doing there.
What do you explain?
At this point in time, I was following up a lead on the vehicle. So I explained to her that I'm trying to find out who was driving that vehicle and if they knew where that vehicle was.
Okay. What information do you... Are you talking to her on the phone? Are you talking to her through the doorbell? Or please take us step by step.
Okay, so the initial contact over the phone, or over the doorbell, was through doorbell and me and her talking. I can't remember if she asked me or I asked her to call over the cell phone, but we transferred over to me on the cell phone talking to her. And again, I explained to her what I'm doing there. And then immediately I get a sense of urgency from her because she tells me that her sister, Grizelda Hernandez,
Okay. You're talking to her, correct?
correct.
And walk us through this carefully. You're advising her about her vehicle being found?
Correct.
Okay. And what specifically do you advise her about her vehicle being found?
I explained to her that we were investigating an abandoned vehicle call, or a vehicle, and we were following up. At that point in time, I don't tell her about what we found or what my initial findings were.
Okay, and you said that on the other line you sensed urgency.
So, yes, correct.
Yes. You said that you sensed urgency. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. During the time you were there, did she ever arrive?
Yes.
Who arrived?
Grizelda.
No. Who arrived at Angelica's house?
Angelica, and then short time, I can't remember if it was mom or her before, but yeah, the family.
Okay. By the time they arrive at her house, what is their emotional state?
When we make contact or when we meet face to face, again, she's concerned because I learned that Grizelda hadn't answered for hours. So when we meet, she realizes, or I realize, that I'm wearing a lanyard.
And what does that lanyard say?
That's how we identify ourselves. It says Laredo Homicide on it. I believe when she reads that homicide is where she went frantic. I think she knew.
Well, all right, let's just say what you know, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And I'll ask you, when you see her look at your lanyard, correct?
Correct.
Do you observe her demeanor at that moment?
Yes.
And what is that demeanor?
Fear. And then she questions me.
She's scared.
Correct, yes.
in the moment that she's scared.
Okay, can approach bench, please.
So, in her sister Angelica's testimony, she did say that after the visit with Burgos, that her sister Grizelda was supposed to pick Angie up, but she never showed, and it was very much unlike her. And then her sister said she received the call from the detective. She must have spoke with him through a Ring doorbell or something. That he had asked if she was the owner of the car and that they had found it abandoned. He then told her he needed to speak to her in person. This was her sister's testimony. Angelica then told the detective that the car was not abandoned and that they needed to look for her sister and nephew. Later, when she found out that they were deceased, she said she then knew Ronald had hurt the baby 2 weeks earlier. And she had recounted that to law enforcement and the coroner because she did beg them to look further into his leg injury. Her sister, Angelica, who also goes by Angie, had also told Grizelda that she didn't think it was a good idea when Grizelda had asked to borrow her car for this meeting. Angie did not think it was a good idea at all because Burgos had been so upset about the child support issue, but then now all of a sudden, if he wants to meet with her and the baby. And he also knew, keep in mind, that Grizelda was going to be taking Dominic to, I believe it was at San Antonio, to a bigger area where they had pediatricians because in that 2-week period prior, his leg had gotten so bad that Dominic was no longer able to walk. So they knew, something serious, and it wound up he was having necrosis in his thigh from that quote-unquote puncture wound. Grizelda had assured her sister that it was going to be at a public park, so Grizelda didn't seem very concerned about it. Angie finally conceded to letting her use the car. And then this detective has just testified that it was obvious that the stroller that Dominic was in had been thrown into the brush. And then they did bring in the stroller earlier and show us that. This detective is the one that followed the stroller imprints in the dirt to the car that Grizelda had driven that day, the white Mercedes she'd borrowed from her sister Angelica. He said he looked in the vehicle and he could see a car seat in the back. So, along with the Chick-fil-A bag. So, he kind of, put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly. They had a deceased infant, a deceased woman, a stroller had been thrown in the brush, and they have this empty white vehicle sitting alone in the parking lot with a car seat in the back. And so he ran the license plates, and that led him to Grizelda's sister, Angelica. He said he got a sense of urgency from Angelica. I think at that point, you know, she had already said that her sister was supposed to come back. She didn't. That was very much unlike her. And at that point, when the detective contacted Angelica, she knew something serious was wrong. So if you missed it, Burgos was actually the first on the scene. After he did these murders, he allegedly went home. He drove his work truck with his work clothes that he had left in that morning. He drove that truck back to his home. And there's footage of him getting out of the vehicle wearing shorts and tennis shoes. So at some point he had changed his clothes. They have never found any bloody clothes that he was wearing from that day. But then the footage shows him being inside his house for maybe 20 minutes or so, I believe it was. And he comes back out in a new uniform and leaves to go back to work. And he goes back to this area. And when he did, when he went back to the area, he had asked, let me see if I can find it. He had asked one of the other agents that he was a supervisor of. They had seen him. Oh, okay. So it was Dennison, Bradley Dennison. He was a Border Patrol agent as well for 23 years. He testified yesterday. And Ronald was Mr. Dennison's supervisor who also worked with him the day of the murders. Bradley Dennison was an eyewitness of a vehicle driving in the area of the murders with Grizelda being the driver. So she was seen driving in that area. But Dennison also saw what we now know as Ronald driving the Kilo unit fast. So he went to check it out. Burgos told Dennison that he was just exploring the area, which Dennison thought the choice of word exploring was very interesting to say the least.
Comply with that. Thank you.
Please rise for the duty.
So Burgos told Dennison that he was just exploring the area. But shortly after that, Dennison heard Burgos radio for an injured woman he had found. So, I mean, obviously, Burgos knew right where it was at. So his whole plan with this seems to be he was going to stage it, make it look like they had been attacked by smugglers. And then he was going to go home, change his clothes, and come back to the scene of the crime and pretend that he had just, happened upon this crime scene. Well, basically, once he was served with child support papers, that's when this whole thing came into play. Up until then, these two, Grizelda and Mr. Burgos, had been friendly. They were not in a relationship at the time that this happened. In fact, they hadn't really spoken much for quite a while until she decided that she needed to pursue the child support. All right, guys, so they're going to go to lunch, and that means so are we. So let's meet back up. I appreciate you guys being here, and we'll come back as soon as they return from lunch. Thank you so much. Please give the video a like, and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys here shortly. Bye-bye.